Good morning, interweb. Welcome back to the Artifexian podcast. In this month's admittedly very short episode, Bill has grokked the XY axis. I repeat, the XY axis is now grokked. There's Anarchy in Otvev, open class pronouns are yeeted, and we talk about the cultural importance of bears with antlers and big scary bird monsters. All that, plus lots more, in this month's episode. Good morning, Bill. How are we?
Good morning, Edgar. I am well. How are you?
I'm great. It's a Saturday. This is all very weird. We usually record on a Sunday, but then we had massive internet problems last week, so we've had to change days, and I'm discombobulated.
Yeah, no, it's all askew.
Maybe we'll have massive internet problems again today, and then we'd have to shove it till tomorrow, which would be the correct time. And in a roundabout way, everything will just kind of come full circle.
The humours will be balanced again.
Exactly. So, to begin the show, I would like to do a little bit of logistics. Everyone loves on-air logistics. Let's go.
Hell yeah.
So I'm going on my honeymoon next month.
Oh.
And I leave... I should know this, somewhere in the first week of September. So the chances, or not September, of October, the chances of us being able to record at our scheduled time next month is just not happening. And I'm gone for 4 weeks. So we're going to miss a month. Now we have, due to various technical problems, some of which was outlined just previously, we've missed a whole bunch of kind of our deadlines, I suppose. Recording a week late or 2 weeks late, etc. So you do that enough and you kind of miss an episode. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it might be incumbent upon us to ensure that we record 2 episodes this month.
Okay.
Which I think is a good idea because this current episode potentially has, or it has the potential to be quite short. So 2 short ones in a month, that equals 1 long one. Maybe? Question mark? So I think that might be a good idea. And I always really enjoy your Halloween themed bits of world building. Assuming you have plans to do that again this year, we would miss that because that would be October when I'm gone. So it might be an idea, perhaps, may I suggest, when we record another one, perhaps in another 2 weeks or so, we do a preemptive Halloween special.
Sure. Works
Cool.
for me.
Very good. Now, you and I will, off air, we'll talk about the exact logistics of that because we'll have to record and I'll have to get it edited prior to me leaving. Mm-hmm. So there's logistical things there, but listeners, I think that's the basic shtick. Today might be a little bit short, and then hopefully very soon, after you're listening to this, there will be a Halloween episode. Hopefully, anyways. As always, we reserve the right to just completely change those plans on the fly. That's how we roll here. So that's the first thing, honeymoon stuff. Second thing, just under the gamut of like general housekeeping, the Discord. We mentioned last month that we set up a Discord, a very bare bones Discord. Please don't expect anything phenomenal over on the server. For the podcast and I guess for the main channel, which I have not yet plugged. We had a few people pop over and say hello. Very good. And obviously there's some established patrons over there. So I just want to bring it up again, just in case anyone missed it. There is a Discord, links in the description or links in the show notes to this episode, and go check it out, hang out. So if you don't use Reddit, you don't care for email, Discord might be a place to chat about these episodes or let us know some feedback, etc.
Absolutely.
Then the next item of follow, I guess, or rather the first item of follow-up, the first of, I guess, 2 or 3 items of follow-up, is Bill, do you want to talk about X and Y axes?
Do I?
Do I ever?
So I said in last month's episode that I could never remember which was X and which was Y in axes. In like coordinate geometry, and people had thoughts about this. So
why did they?
It was pointed out by Kara Sarian in the live chat of like the premiere of the last episode, and also by Omni314 on Reddit. A good mnemonic for this is X is a cross. As in, it is both the shape of a cross and it is horizontal, as in across dimensionally. So that's pretty useful.
Genius.
Yep.
So much better than my X looks like an arrow thing, and then failing to remember that X is reflectionally symmetrical. So much more eloquent.
Rotationally more so, the issue.
It's the both.
Yeah, but the fact that it's reflectionally symmetrical, it would still be in the same plane.
What?
You mean reflectionally, as in like in a mirror, right?
No, as in you can reflect it about its axes. You can reflect it you can split it in half and then reflect it on itself.
Oh, okay. So that just means the same thing as rotationally.
Oh, is that? I thought rotationally symmetrical is if you rotate it.
Yeah,
and it's the same.
I don't understand why what you're describing is different.
Oh, I guess you know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of it in terms of how I would manipulate it in Illustrator.
Okay.
And I would transform it because I think the nomenclature you do use is reflect about the X or Y axis.
Okay.
To kind of do that. So
and you would if you did that, you would turn it 90 degrees.
No. Think about if you had. God, I think I'm suddenly realizing that I'm thinking about this in an entirely backwards way. I'm thinking about constructing it from its atomic parts, right? So this is so useless the way I'm thinking about it, now I say it out loud. If you take an X, right, and just cut it in half.
Yeah.
And then you go into Illustrator and you're reflect about the X-axis. So it takes that half and then makes a reflection about the X-axis or about the Y-axis. See what I'm saying? So it's not it rotates. It's it builds into an X.
Okay.
Think of it folding a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I'm going from a folded paper state into an unfolded paper state using the nomenclature of Adobe Illustrator.
Right. I don't see how that gets you from horizontal to vertical, though.
Well, because it is symmetrical about a fold about the X-axis and about the Y-axis.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
I'm so sorry. This is so convoluted. I'm not helping at all. Do you want to just talk about the other people who are more helpful? Like all of you being a Cosmo Fishhawk too?
That was great. What you're saying does actually totally make sense to me now, just to be clear.
Yeah, it's just very, very, very convoluted.
Yeah. For how my brain works, but I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. So all of you being pointed out that the XY referring to horizontal and vertical respectively isn't arbitrary. The x-axis represents your first variable, and the y-axis is your second variable. And we take x being the first one and connect that to the number line, like how when we teach numbers we think of it on a horizontal line from 0 with the positives to the right and the negatives to the left. And that's the first one, and it's x is before y alphabetically. So when we add a second dimension, the vertical dimension, we use the next letter, y, which that also kind of made sense to me. I would say that it is still, for my money, kind of arbitrary that we're deciding that the number line is horizontal rather than vertical. Like, numbers are neither, they're just are. So you're still making a sort of a decision there to put the first one horizontal, but it does make sense that in how we come to that in a pedagogical kind of way, we're building up to that. So that does make sense to me. I think I have solved this problem internally now. I think I will remember this consistently from now on.
Oh, go team. Well done, listeners. We all got together and we solved this for Bill. Is there anything else in your life that requires solving that the gang can help you out with?
So much. We'll put that down for the next episode. And Cosmo Fishhawk, also on Reddit, pointed out that X comes before Y in the alphabet, so the first dimension comes prior to the second. The first dimension is nothing but a line. The Y adds height, so then you get 2 dimensions. So that's kind of the same thing as what all of you Bean was saying, but this one doesn't work for me as well because it doesn't have the justification that you are building from the concept of the number line being a more fundamental element and then adding a second dimension to that. So the justification in all of you Beans one works better for how I think about things.
Yeah, I mentioned in the Reddit, Cosmo Fishhawk's comment sounded very philosophical, as in I expect that sort of verbiage, I suppose, to come out of a philosopher's mouth. It's just a very eloquent phrasing of it. For me, I would find that more useful than Olive You Bean's comment. Olive You Bean's comment was too technical. Not that I struggle with this at all. So it doesn't actually really matter. And really, the winner here is Omni314 and Karasarian. But it is funny how you're like, no, Cosmo Fishhawk doesn't work for me. And I'm like, oh, that totally works. It's funny how our brains work in very different ways. And I think that's kind of cool. We're just two brains out in the world processing information differently. Great crack.
Well, it's interesting because, the X is across thing is more like snappy to remember, but it doesn't actually really mean anything. So that's just kind of like, it's just an mnemonic. It doesn't have any justification, whereas the Olive You Bean one does. It kind of gives me a why, which I find helpful.
That's the thing, and I think I'm a bit of an outlier here in that and it's very kind of like Neanderthal behavior for me altogether, is that sometimes I am like, I don't need the why, I just need the practical level of it. I just need the X's across, and that's it. The Y sometimes is confusing. It's like I liken to every time I have to interact with plumbers, right? So plumbers come over to the house, and there's something wrong with something or other, and the plumbers talking me through all the reasons as to why these things are occurring, and like, the water's doing this and that, all this sort of nonsense. And I'm like, okay, that's all lovely, right? But I'm not looking for an apprenticeship in plumbing right now. Can you just tell me practically what it is I need to do? And they're like, oh, just flick the switch here. Grand. And I'm like, I can yeet all the rest of the information. It's not that important to me. I just need to know how to do this. So it's like this in the XY thing. It's like, it's fun and it's interesting to learn, to know about like the number line and like how we build it up pedagogically or whatever.
Teacherfully.
And that's great to know or whatever, but that doesn't resonate as much as just kind of like, it's a cross, man, a cross. And I'm like, done, got it, that's it. So again, I think we're very different that way. I don't need the why in order for it to make sense for me. I just need a practical sort of hook to hang my hat on. Which is, again, another way of working. And it's a bit of a detriment for me because again, I will just sometimes, very often, I will just not critically engage with information. It's happened a number of times throughout the years in videos where I'll research something and someone will just say a thing in a paper or whatever. I'd be like, okay, great, got it, understand that, because it's just I've processed that thing. And then I'd make the video and someone in comments would bring up a question and be like, oh, it would have really helped if I had asked about the why of this. And I just didn't, because my brain works differently that way. So yeah, I'm a Neanderthal, I suppose. Is the takeoff from that.
I mean, the Neanderthals were very, very sensitive and intelligent and practical people.
But actually, that's mean. I shouldn't say that. That's both self-deprecating and also I'm sure there's other people out there like me. And I'm sure they don't want to be called Neanderthals. So that's actually really mean. I'm going to take that back. We all do things in different... We are but brains, Bill, walking through the world, processing information in different ways. That's it. Now, I have a comment here, if I maybe move on. Yeah.
Sure.
From Reasonableism. I believe this was in the Reddit. I forgot to add a u/, so I'm pretty confident it was in the Reddit, but not entirely sure. This is on High Fantasy.
It was. Reddit.
Excellent. Shout out Reasonableism. This is on High Fantasy Slice of Life. Essentially, this is they're looking for help, and we're going to put it to the community and see what the community can come up with. Reasonableism writes, this talk of Totoro not having a strict plot line reminded me of a kind of book I'd like to read that I've been looking for a while without much success. And it dawned on me that this community, if any, would understand what I'm looking for. What I've been calling it when searching for it is, quote, High Fantasy Slice of Life, end quote. And the best that has gotten me so far is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. If I can find a link to that, I'll throw in the show notes. I know nothing about that work. Basically, what I want, though, this is the important part, is a story where I can indulge in some sweet world building from the perspective of an ordinary person or other organism in that world without some pesky high-stakes plot getting in the way. Just experience the vibes. I realize now, having written all that it might have been more convenient for me had I just asked on Discord, but here we are. So
because we have a Discord now.
Because we have a Discord now, exactly. So I wrote back to them and was like, can't really help you. In the intervening time, I've actually come up with a really unhelpful suggestion, but a suggestion nonetheless. Ava. World building notes, links in the show notes. I recall listening to one of her videos. Could not tell you which one of these which one of these it was. But in this video, she made a point of she was talking about a book or something and says the author just spends a whole lot of time just kind of like doing this sort of slice of life type thing without it like furnishing a plot or whatever. Just like you, the reader, get to experience just being in the world. If Reasonablism, you're interested in going back to Eva's back catalogue, or Eva's back catalogue. I believe it's Eva, and I believe they're Polish, so I think it's pronounced Eva. I can never remember. World Building Notes. If you're interested in going back to World Building Notes back catalogue, it's fun anyways. I'd recommend doing it. You might be able to find something there. It's not the most efficient suggestion that's ever been given on the internet, but it is a suggestion. Bill, I'll toss it out to you before we toss it out to the Artifexian fans.
I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head. But my suggestion for further research is just look on TV tropes. That'll have something. I looked up slice of life and then the literature suggestions and searched for fantasy. And it actually didn't mention Legends and Lattes, but two that it did suggest are Protector of the Small by Tamora Pierce, which is about a girl becoming a knight in a fantasy medieval world, but there's essentially no overarching plot except for the final book. So that might satisfy. And something called Moonlight Seasons, which is about a witch living in a town and who helps the people of the town. It's on Archive of Our Own.
What's been on Archive of Our Own? Is that something that's known?
Yes.
Oh, what is this?
I will not elaborate. It's a fan fiction website. It's a well-known fan fiction website and community. So that's where this story is hosted.
Oh,
or where it is written.
Those are two kind of really good suggestions.
There we go.
Three really good suggestions anyways. Wow.
Well, I mean, the two suggestions I got just from doing what I suggested in the first one, so maybe it was redundant. But
no. Inflate the numbers, Bill. There's three suggestions.
Pump up the metrics.
Do you know what I was thinking? What was that really terrible book that I absolutely hated and you adored? It was with the dragon and the Victorian people. We talked about it years ago, and I found it really boring because nothing happened at all in the book. This might be right up that sort of alley. What was it called?
No, because it's not slice of life, because loads of stuff happens.
No, but nothing happens in the book. They just talk. Okay, I've been a little bit facetious here. But
Victorian era started in 1837, Edgar.
Oh dear. What is the book? What is the book called? The dragon thing.
I'll say it, but I'm not going to tell you. You like mute for a second because you don't deserve to hear this. It's called Temeraire. Temeraire by Naomi Novik. I don't think that would fit at all.
Okay, because I remember thinking about it being just like lots of characters just sitting around, no plot, doing nothing, and get to experience this like dragon world or whatever. Especially
because each book is a different location in the world, so there's a lot happens that is less low key than the impression I'm getting from reasonablism here.
Okay, all right, fair enough. And to be honest with you, it was a bad suggestion anyways, because I can't in good consciousness recommend that book to reasonablism, because boy, it was awful. I must do? I must actually revisit this, because I think as the older I get, the more tolerable I get of everything, I think. Whereas, when you're young and sprightly and rambunctious and all that. You have very firm opinions about everything. It's like, this is bad, this is wrong, hate that, blah. And then, you know, the more you develop as a person, I think the more you begin to see shades of grey. I should probably reread that book now that it's been many years and see, because I still have it on Kindle, and see what I think of it. But yeah, anyhow, High Fantasy Slice of Life, folks, yes, you listening and in chat. I literally pointed at where chat would be if I'm streaming, which is I think I might be losing my mind. If you have any suggestions, leave them all the usual places. As mentioned before, we have a Reddit, we have email, we have a Discord. All these links are in the usual places. Let's all help reasonableism out here. Okay, onwards, John Lang.
Let's do it.
John Lang, frequent contributor to the show, I made a comment that was essentially, there is no fourth person, but there is the impersonal. I'm only bringing this up to say, shout out John Lang, first of all. And then the other one is just be like, I got no heat from my comment about the first person, which is stunning to me. Like, this never happens. Usually when I'm like, I'm going to say a thing, and I just know that people are going to come at me about it. But no one at all messaged me, was like, you're totally wrong about this no fourth person thing. Which is amazing. Like, I shouldn't be surprised, but I am surprised. So thanks everyone. There is no fourth person. Let's keep up with that. Follow up done.
Great.
Let's do some world building.
Let's do some world building.
World building. Anarchy and Otvev. Wait, I can't do that because you might change the title. Let me take that again. Okay, world building. What you got?
I have a direct sequel to last episode's letter, in the form of a report.
Letter to Electric Boogaloo?
No.
That might be the best joke I've ever made.
Anarchy in Otvev. It is our sad duty to inform the public of yet further agitationist violence, the latest in the wave of destructive radicalism that afflicts Abeski society. Following the massacres in Mirsphere, the insurrection in Lansk, and many other grievous acts besides, their limited scope rendering them no less shocking in their violence and social importance, agitationists have seized control of part of the ancient city of Otvev. Aided by diverse agents, whose identities are not yet fully known, these strikers have taken occupation of a large factory district. The following facts are known at this time. The agitation began as a strike in a Valdine company foundry. The Valdini leadership failed to suppress the strike swiftly, and were indeed seeking to reach accommodation with the agitationists. What began as a strike turned to violence. Several Valdini officers, a number of bailiffs and Valdini marines, as well as unknown local workers and citizens, have been killed by the agitationists. A traitorous cadre of Tamari aviators and marines, uninvolved in the dispute, were convinced to join the anarchy, and in doing so murdered their captain, Sakhila Pofyan. Their seized vessel was turned over to the control of the agitationists. It is clear that agitation cannot be met with diplomacy. Neither accommodation nor debate will satisfy the aims of those who slay factory owners and workers alike, and claim to seek justice in doing so. In submitting to the demands of strikers, the Valdini leadership in Otvev submitted to their own execution, and sentenced Captain Pofyan, among other innocents, to the same fate. This cowardly surrender to tyranny is the ultimate aim of agitation. Lest the agitationists fashion the noble city of Otvev into another shattered Lansk, it is imperative that action be taken immediately to crush this occupation. In the name of decency and prosperity, in the memory of the martyred Captain Pofyan, the cities must quell this movement. Those companies capable of resisting this agitation must act against all strikers and anarchist agents. Anonymous broadsheet posted in several Aveski cities.
Cool, very good. This is a direct follow-up or direct sequel because of Captain Sakila Pofyan, correct?
Yes,
So
and the event that is being described here is what actually happened after what Sakila Pofyan was up to in the last episode.
So, in case there's any new people here or they've not listened to the last episode, do you want to give a quick recap on what happened last month?
Sure. This is an ongoing setting where there's a sort of a society-wide labour dispute happening. And in the last episode, one of the companies, so imagine the East India Company, a large kind of trading, somewhat piratical sort of organisation, was seeking to reach a peaceful resolution with striking workers. And this other company, the Tamari company, were going to intervene to prevent that from happening. Firstly, they were going to try and take over the business so they could vote down any attempt to accommodate the workers' demands. And if that wasn't going to happen, they were under orders to use violence. And Sakila Pofyan was the captain with the orders on what to do regarding violence.
Mm-hmm. The Tamari captain.
The Tamari captain, yes. The Valdini being the other company, and the Tamari being the more villainous faction, the most villainous faction.
And the bigger, more far-reaching organization, correct?
Not necessarily bigger or more far-reaching, but more ruthless.
Oh, I thought they were like the dominant player in the space, the Tamari, no?
I haven't decided.
Oh, wow, that's the impression I got. Maybe just because of exposure bias. We hear so much about the Tamari, you think that these are like the only game in town and the rest of them are all like minor players. But
no,
yeah,
they'd actually be a newer company. They're a younger company. They're more ambitious and ruthless.
New doesn't mean necessarily small. Like, obviously, yeah, everything starts off small, but you can be relatively new and you can explode in size and influence.
Sure.
So I guess like, my first underlying bit here of the prose has nothing to do with the kind of story of what's going on. Taking a beat from reasonableism's wants from earlier, I'd like to know about the slice of life from the setting here. Otvev. Just the phrasing you said, like the antagonists have seized control of part of the ancient city of Otvev. That immediately made me think, how old are these cities? Like, how long have these been about? Are these like American cities old? Or are these like, Cairo old, etc.?
No,
how deep is the history here?
They wouldn't be in the thousands of years. It wouldn't go that far.
Okay, but not as young as, say, American cities? Or about that?
Maybe like East Coast.
Maybe like East Coast. So that's, so like 300-400 years.
Yeah, something like that, maybe.
Something like that. Okay, cool. So these agitationists, they've taken control of a factory district. Now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is a similar sort of thing that has occurred before. Was this in Lansk? And did they also take some factories? Or was it a different type of institution they took or whatever?
It was more mixed where they took over in Lansk.
Okay. And I'm assuming we take the factories because means of production.
Well, that's just where the site of the violence and the dispute was. It wasn't. Right. They set out in order to take this for strategic reasons. It was just, that's kind of how the chips fell.
Oh, okay. So this was actually kind of like a bit of a protest that just went wrong or right, depending on your persuasion.
Yeah.
Okay. So a big thing for me here was the fact that the Valdine leadership, the Valdine leadership failed to suppress the strike swiftly and were indeed seeking to reach accommodation with the antagonists. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing a shift here, I think, in the companies being more open to negotiation, or at least prior to the combination of this letter. And we had a little bit of that last month, I believe.
Yes, that was why the Tamari were getting involved, to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, so, which I think is an interesting thing, and I think it paints a bit of like an offstage narrative of the tide shifting a little bit. That's kind of like, oh God, we've really tried to suppress this, but it's not working. Maybe we need to negotiate with the terrorists a little bit to get our way here. Mm-hmm. So I think that's cool. That kind of paints a kind of complex off-screen situations, which I think is good. Another surprising thing for me was the fact that a traitorous cadre of Tamari aviators, uninvolved in the dispute, were convinced to join the Anarchy. So we have a switching of sides here. And then they murdered Captain Sahila Pofyan. Do you want to talk to me about that switching of sides? What's going on there? And also, what the hell does the word cadre mean?
It's like a revolutionary group.
Oh, do you know where it comes from? What's the etymology of that?
According to Wiktionary, it says borrowed from French cadre, from Italian quadro, meaning a framed painting or a square, ultimately from like four, like quator, which doesn't really answer the question.
That's really interesting. Okay, all right. So, why are we got some Tamari traitors? What's this about?
So, if you recall from the last episode, Sakila Pafyan, the captain, was under orders to intervene with violence if the other means of preventing the accommodation didn't work out. So if they didn't manage to buy out the company or sufficiently intimidate the shareholders, then they were to actually use direct violence. And the Marines some of the Marines and aviators under Captain Pafyan's command objected to this and mutinied.
Okay. So it's less a sort of like we agree with the agitation per se. It's more we disagree with what the boss is saying.
Yeah, that's how it started. Maybe that led them to question the whole situation, the whole system. But the instigation of it wasn't necessarily revolutionary fervor. It was disagreeing with the orders they had.
I mean, that is some dangerous territory right there in terms of the companies, because the minute you start losing your own, it's kind of like you might be ideologically on the wrong side.
Well, they're not the first to mutiny.
No, I suppose not. It's given me Dick Cheney voting for Democrat vibes, where it's like, oh wait, you're not meant to do that. You're not meant to switch sides. What's this about? And it's switching of sides. How bad is mutiny seen? And I'm sure I've asked this question before, but again, we only do this once a month, so it was probably 3 years ago. Because I am immediately thinking about, I know very little about this, so please someone correct me if I'm way off, but I believe in the Japanese military in World War II, and I would assume prior to and perhaps somewhat afterwards, they had a culture, I believe, of it. We think of a military kind of like, or at least I think of military kind of like the States, where it's all like you follow the orders of your commanding officer loyally, and you don't question whatever. Apparently in the Japanese military, that questioning of orders and like calling out bad orders or whatever and going against bad orders was perfectly fine and reasonable, and wouldn't be met with whatever the word is, like being thrown out of the army, etc. What's the culture here? Are we hard clamped down on any mutineers or anyone who disagrees with the higher ups, or is it more, I guess, liberal? I'm assuming the answer is the former, but always worth checking.
Well, no, it's perfectly fine to debate and disagree with orders and push back or look for clarification or whatever. But mutiny is a whole different beast, and that is rewarded with execution.
Yeah, whereas again, I think the culture in the Japanese military at the time was sort of like, if your commanding officer is seen to be acting against, against Japanese interests, you overthrow them. Like you do a mutiny, and that's seen as a good and honorable thing, because it's like the prime focus is to ensure the greatness of the Japanese empire, and mutiny can play into that, which is just a really weird way of thinking about that. That's like culturally kind of acceptable. Now, I'm sure it's more complex than what I'm giving it credit for. I'm sure it's not just like, hey, I overthrew yet another commanding officer this week. It's the fourth. It's the fourth since Tuesday. Like, I'm sure that there's like some sort of control here, but I wouldn't be surprised there wasn't, because the culture of I guess like post Meiji Restoration Japan was a bit mad with its whole like I guess absolute monarchy mixed representative democracy going on thing, where the emperor is like a god king, but it's also a democratic. Like, it was just, the whole system is just endlessly fascinating and weird. I'd encourage anyone to check out around the world wars, Japanese culture and how they did things, and stories about how history played out there. It's just really, really interesting. Anyhow, sorry, I just went off one. It reminded me of Japan. Cool. There you go. Cool. Later on in the... Okay, so I should probably not whiz by this. Captain Sahila Pofyan is dead, and she's dead at the hands... Or he or she, I can never remember. Is it she? She is dead at the hands of her own. That's quite a serious thing, I'm assuming. Should not be passed up. We noted, rip to the goat. Right. Now, later on you say, lest the agitationists fashion the noble city of Otvev into another shattered Lansk. Now, shattered Lansk has... that phrase prompted me to ask, how is Lansk at the moment? Is it really shattered? Like, is it this like no-go? It's fine, isn't it?
Like, there's problems there, and they still have prison camps for people who were involved in the occupation, and people suspected of being tangentially involved or just around the area. But, the city itself wasn't massively damaged apart from the district that was taken over.
Yeah. So this is hyperbole.
Yes.
Later on, in memory of the martyred Captain Pofyan. So we have a martyring situation going on. But if I may just like death to the author here a little bit, I think this is quite an interesting... If she is to go on and become a true martyr and symbol, she's quite a flawed symbol. But in that, like, if she was killed by the insurrectionists and the agitationists, then that would be like a true martyr. Like, she gave her life for the cause and the evil guys killed her. Whereas her story is a little bit suboptimal and require a bit of spin, because she was killed by her own, which kind of makes your cause feel a little bit less righteous when your own lads are like, no. So I could see a complex dynamic evolving where, people try to get behind a symbol, but then you have a whole bunch of other people going like, actually, no, the genesis of this is totally flawed. She's not a martyr. Yes, she is a martyr, back and forth. Like, it's not a universally accepted, she's not a universally accepted symbol, which I think is if she goes, full viral, so to speak, I think that's a really interesting sort of thing. Debate can be had over that. I'm not sure if you intended it to be that way, but I'm reading, stories are happening in my head.
Yeah, well, what I was thinking is they're very aware of that interpretation of it, that she's more of a failure than a victim. Yeah. And this is a very deliberate attempt to control the narrative and get ahead of that and present her as a martyr.
But not even failure, right? Because failures can be martyred. I'm thinking something kind of akin to like 300 when they all was it at the hot gates?
The hot gates.
Thermopylae. The hot gates. Thermopylae, yeah. They failed, right? But they're martyred. I'm assuming they would have been probably martyred because of that failure, because they were standing up against the big bad Persians or whatever the hell. So your failure is fine. It's the failing is not the problem. It's the fact that like you were killed by your own. That sullies the message that we are righteous. You can righteously fail, but this cannot be, unless the spin is really good, presented as a righteous thing when you're like, my subordinates had to kill me because I was just like, what we are fighting for is so wrong.
But yeah, well, you see, the spin here isn't that. The spin here is that she was righteous and she was betrayed
Yeah. And this is what I mean by like you can read many different lines into it, and different factions and different people will read differently into the martyrdom. So she's not a clean cut figure, which is great, which I really like. So yeah, I think it's great. I think it's absolutely great. And also she made me bring up the hot gates and 300 and all that. So it's a good time when these things get brought up in context.
Did you know there was a Battle of Thermopylae in the Second World War?
Was there 300 people stuck in a small gap?
No, it was more than that, but it was largely Maoris versus Nazis.
Maoris versus Nazis. It is this time. Oh, we're going to get demonetized because of Nazis, I guarantee you. We just need to say violence now a couple of times, and then YouTube will really have a real conniption. It is always interesting to me to remember that the world wars were actually world wars, because it's very easy to forget that and just be like, it's a European thing. Come on. And like, the US was functionally just like Neo-Europe, like, but then you're suddenly like a bunch of Australians are involved. The Maoris come in, and it really is pulling from everywhere. And then you remember like the remnants of colonialism pulling in people from all over the world. And it truly is just a mad situation where, you have Thermopylae 2 electric Boogaloo with Maoris fighting Nazis. It's just crazy.
Yeah, so it was, I'm just reading about it here. There was the 19th Brigade of Australia and the 6th Brigade of New Zealand. And the 6th Brigade had like a large Maori contingent.
Madness.
Yeah.
Madness.
Pretty cool.
Fair play to the Maori. Now, final thing on my part here, final thing I've underlined, and then you can tell me what I missed, was just anonymous broadsheet posted in several Abeski cities. I must have asked this before, but I don't remember. Anonymous broadsheet? Do people just like print broadsheets and disperse them? Is that a thing that was ever done? Like, surely you would just need to be like, you would be an anonymous author in a broadsheet, but to just on the fly print your own broadsheet? Are these just flyers? Are these basically just flyers? Like what are these things?
So it's like a poster.
Okay.
But the poster is like the front page of a newspaper. Sort of.
Okay.
Yeah.
But surely the broadsheet then would not be anonymous. It would be the newspaper, like the Abeski Times.
But there's no name put on it.
There's no name put on the paper?
Yeah.
So I'm so confused. What's in the rest of the paper then?
There isn't. There is a sheet. It is one sheet.
Right. Okay, I see.
But it resembles like a newspaper is what I mean. Like it has a big headline and it has this article on it.
Right. It's literally in the sense of it's singular. It is a broadsheet. It is a sheet. It is not broadsheet in the sense of the newspaper.
No.
Right.
This is a slightly archaic usage of broadsheet.
Right. Okay. There we go. That completely stumped me altogether.
Yeah. And this has been probably pretty clear that anyone can guess it, or anyone who has been following along with this setting will know this has been printed by some kind of Tamari subsidiary, but it's just not explicitly, they're not saying that.
Why is that clear?
I mean, because so much of what I write, from a Doylean perspective, so much of what I write is based around the Tamari. And from a Watsonian perspective, they are trying to spin this in favor of the Tamari company's aims.
If I were to contribute anything to the world, and people would end up doing like Doylean and Watsonian to my name, you'd never say Edgarian? That's weird. The stress is in the wrong place. How
could
would
use your surname?
Grunwaldian?
Grunwaldian. That's great.
I mean, I suppose I never like my English surname, like Grunwald. I think it sounds stupid.
What about if you say it in German?
Yeah, Grunwald sounds much better.
Grunwaldlich.
Grunwaldlich. Exactly. But if I was, what's the word for when you just have one name? There's a term for it. Mononymous. If I was mononymous and it was just Edgar, how would you do that? Like
Edgarian.
Edgarian? You would go with Edgarian? That's awful because it shifts the stress. Edgarin. Edgar. Yeah, you can't do anything else. Edgarin? No, you no.
Edgarin.
Edgar Ryan, like
INE.
River Ryan.
He's a podcaster and a YouTuber in the Edgar Ryan mode.
Exactly.
In the Edgar Ryan tradition.
Now, anyway, sorry, tangent aside. What have I missed?
I think just that it was a piece of barely disguised Tamari propaganda. I think we've covered everything else.
Excellent. I eagerly look forward to potentially Halloween time next month. Do you know what else I was going to ask about?
No.
I don't know. I was about to say I don't know whether or not you want to wade into the realms of politics, but let's be real. Every bit of world building is wading into the realms of politics. And you do. I know it's not a tradition, as we've talked before, but you do have some traditional stuff, like the tradition of the Halloween thing. You did have that one year where you lined up the New Year with, or Christmas or something, with the Year Eyes festival thing.
Yes. Which took place in Otvev.
Which took place in Otvev. Who would have thunk it? Hey, one of the 5 cities. There's a 20% chance that something would happen in that city. But if I wonder, would it be an idea around? Because I mean, like, look, it's going to be hard to avoid the US presidential election when it happens. I wonder, would it be an idea to have a sort of politics in Cairn, or election in Cairn? I don't know. Do they do elections? Have we ever talked about electing someone or presidents? But again, they don't really have that sort of country vibe going on. So maybe
a Besky isn't a state.
Yeah, it would just be a local type election. So that's no gravy really. Okay, never mind. Scratch that from the cards. All right. Anarchy in Otvev, done. I was just super quick things to say, like 2 very, very quick things to say about the language and how it's going. Shall we launch into that?
Yes.
Okay. Abeski, the language. For new people here, I contribute nothing to the show. Bill does all the work. And I thought to myself, that's a bit unfair, given that nominally this show is in my name, I suppose. So I was like, maybe I can help contribute to what we do here by helping Bill create a language for the Abeski people. That is what we're doing here, or rather, I do it on live streams. If you want to see those live streams, you need to be a member of either the podcast patron or the main channel Patreon. I'll leave links in all the usual places. Friday nights is when I usually do it. Not every Friday night, but on Friday nights. If you want to see the process unfold more or less real time, go check it out. Last month, we had discussed pronouns. We had began setting up, I began asking Bill about various questions about pronouns to try and establish where his mind or his headspace is at, or pronouns. I've done a little bit of work on these on the live stream. I have nothing to present of yet because it's not done. I just have some follow-up points and clarifications and stuff that I need off you, Bill. And then hopefully next time we talk, I'll be able to talk through the whole system. Sure. So first one is in the... Literally, the show is going to end in 5 minutes. Oh God! In the last month's episode, I brought up the concept of an open class of pronouns, and that is where, unlike English, where we have a very set, closed set of pronouns, or more or less closed set of pronouns, open class pronouns are constantly bringing in new nouns to act as pronouns.
Yes.
Yeah, new ones just constantly come in. It's usually like a massive amount are available to speakers. Japanese is the canonical example of this. It occurred to me afterwards that I think, and you had said, maybe we'll go with that. Maybe it occurred to me afterwards I shouldn't even have brought it up, because we've spoken a number of times about how these people are not that big on formality, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Open class pronouns are very often linked to formality. You bring in a noun that like humbles you, the speaker, like the word servant, like servant wishes to see master, that sort of thing. It's very often associated with that. And I was like, that's just not thematically appropriate, given what you've said. So I'm going to ask that we just get rid of the concept of open class pronouns, and we just have a pronoun system like English, a set amount of pronouns. That's it. Thoughts? Please let me do that.
So to get rid of the open class.
Yeah. So you're not bringing in a ton of new nouns for pronouns. and not readily just adapting any old noun to act in a sort of pronominal role, like the sort of master says something about servant, like just borrowing in nouns. So yeah, I'd like to get rid of that. You happy with that?
Fine with me.
Cool. Brilliant.
I wasn't super tied to it.
Good. Yeah, I figured you weren't, but just in case, it always warrants asking questions, because otherwise we're in a situation where, like last time, I thought that you were working towards a gendered language, and you were absolutely not. So always worth asking questions. The other thing is, we had mentioned, or you had mentioned that you would like pronoun forms for humans, animates, and inanimates. So third person pronouns, one for humans, one for animates, and one for inanimates.
That sounds familiar, yeah.
Yep. So I was trying to tossing around ideas about where these things come from, and I would like to talk about the idea of culturally important animals. Because I was thinking about bringing in a third person animate pronoun, deriving it from a culturally important animal. You know the way, in English, you might say something like, oh, the buckos or the young bucks are coming. You use words bucks as kind of like, oh, bucks are here. Like as in, relating to deer and things like that. That's not uncommon to do that sort of thing. So I was, and I didn't want to just use a generic word like animal, right? So for third person animates, you could just use the word animal, and that could grind up and become a pronoun over time. I wanted to do something that was more kind of reflective of the sort of setting. And so then I got thinking about the idea of culturally important animals. Now, we have talked about Urzelk before. And for those who don't remember, Urzelk, Ursa, Urs, bear, elk. It's a bear with antlers. We have talked about this before, but I don't think we ever talked about like how culturally significant these animals are. Like, would this be the equivalent of like, it probably wouldn't be the equivalent of like a cow in an agrarian culture, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So these are very rare things. You don't see them very often.
They are rare, and also they are exotic. They are not from like they are not found in the Avesk region in the Urheimat. They are foreign.
Okay, and remind me, the Arvix, are these on this planet?
They are.
They are. What's their role? Are they also exotic? And I think they're bordering mythological, aren't they?
Not quite as mythological, but they're big scary monsters.
They're big scary monsters. Okay, and I'm assuming regular normal people, much like the Urzek, will never really come into contact with a Arvix.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be like encountering a wolf, kind of, but worse.
Okay. Would something like an Urzalk or an Arvix figure in stories, popular stories? Would they be in the zeitgeist of the people? I'm thinking immediately stuff like a dragon, for example.
Yeah.
Right. If I were to just my bloody computer, I'm sorry, my computer is going absolutely mental with notifications. I really hope none of y'all heard all of the dinging. I'm just going to put stuff on Do Not Disturb because that was crazy. I'm thinking of like if I were to just do a sort of like hyper real version of some Asian culture, like dragon, for example. I could totally see a word for like dragon being used to basically mean he, she, etc. Getting ground down and things like that. Even though dragon is not real, but like perhaps it plays a big role in the sort of cultural zeitgeist. Is there anything here with the Urzelk and the Arvix like that?
Urzelk, definitely not.
Definitely. Okay, cool. Good.
They are a very foreign concept.
Okay. And the Arvix?
Yeah, they would be in stories potentially, like in mythology kind of stuff. Yeah, potentially.
And are they seen as symbolism wise? Would they be seen as like I know you said they're big scary monsters, but would they be seen as kind of like strong figures? Like if someone were to call you an Arvix, for example, would you take that as a compliment? Be like, yeah, I'm big and scary and strong and conquer the world, or would that be kind of like an insult?
I'd imagine it would be like calling someone a maniac or a brute.
Okay. But not like calling someone like a bear. Like you'd think like an alpha male. Alpha males would love to be called a bear, not that.
No, I wouldn't imagine so.
Okay, so then further with the animals, they're the only two animals I can think of. Oh, there's also the sky jellyfish things. Mm-hmm. I'm going to work on the assumption a sky jellyfish is not very culturally relevant. And because it's eaten as well, so like in this context, we would not take the sky jellyfish. But just putting it out, just asking anyways, is this a culturally relevant animal? Would people feel insulted to be called a sky jellyfish? Or
probably, yeah.
Probably, yeah. That makes sense to me.
Like calling someone a chicken.
Precisely, it's not a very strong animal. Like it's a prey. It's a prey item. Because you said you can make meals out of them. We had that one letter where some bloke made a meal out of it. Yeah. Now outside of those three animals, we've not discussed animals at all in a Besk. Is this like a sort of I hate to bring up Final Fantasy again, but is this kind of like a Final Fantasy situation where you do have a bunch of very clear like monsters, but also you have deer. Like their deer are just there, and there's mice. Like there's regular earth animals, but also sprinkled amongst them, there's like these mad animals. Does this culture have cows and horses, or would they be all unique organisms? Do you know?
They do have more familiar things, and a lot of the stuff that would be domesticated would be familiar. In fact, and I would say the other way around, most of the things that are familiar would be things that have been domesticated. Because, as we've established, the history here is that humans aren't native to this planet.
Correct.
It has been settled in whatever manner, thousands of years in the past. They would have brought animals with them, but there would also have been indigenous fauna. So they would have brought probably... Okay, well, the thing about it, this is Earth does not factor into this at all, but we're assuming the planet of origin will have things that equate to pigs and cows and
it's like
gerbils.
that very important, the gerbils. It's like that we mentioned years ago now, this one author who I think as an appendices or something, basically like he throughout the book or something they would use terms like carrots, and you would just assume that they're just very carrot-like, and then later on they were just kind of like they are like carrots except they're purple or whatever. It's the same thing here. It's like there is a pig. It is as pig-like as you can possibly get, with maybe a few minor tweaks, but really it's just a pig. Let's not focus on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially.
So if I if I use things like book or things like that, you'd be fine with that. All the nomenclature around how we kind of like anthropomorphize kind of important like agrarian animals, etc. You'd be comfortable with all that.
In principle, yes. I mightn't like the specific implementation of it, but yeah, I'm not like objecting to the idea that you refer to deer or cows or whatever, or dogs in the language.
And actually, it's worth pointing out, or reminding myself at least, that this is looking for a source for a third person animate form. So we're not even doing the thing where we a human form would mean book. It would be like
say that again.
This is questioning the third person human. This is questioning the third person animate form pronoun, right? Mm-hmm. So we're not even. I kind of strayed into the realms of taking a word like book or bull or something like that, or bear, and going, "Hey, we can apply that to humans." But that's not what we're doing here. I need to remind myself. We're just looking for a third person animate pronoun. So we're finding some sort of animal, perhaps, taking something to do with it, and then like semantically featuring it and applying it to all third person animates.
Yeah.
And given that we're involving things like fire, it might be worth my while making sure that I go for a kind of like big, impressive animal, like a stag or stallion or something big. That is basically it. That's all I have really. It's going to take a while for me to do this because these pronouns obviously are involved in the polypersonal agreement. Remember, polypersonal agreement is where you bang multiple pronouns onto the verb, right? So
Yes.
In English, you know where you have like it's I walk and he walks. That S there is third person agreement.
Yeah.
We only do that for subjects in English, right? And we do it hardly at all. But when we do it, we only do it for subjects. In polypersonal languages, you'd have some sort of morphology that's both for subject and object. So it'd be like, you'd be able to say like, eatsa. And that sa means he eats it, for example, right? So we're doing that here. We talked about that before. But these markers come from pronouns. So not only do I have to come up with the pronouns, but then I have to also make forms that work when they're smashed onto the verb. So all that is to say, it's going to take a while. Hopefully it's done for next time.
So does that happen in English as well, that all those markers come from pronouns?
You go back far enough, yeah.
So the S in he walks, that S is a remnant of a pronoun somehow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now I'm suddenly... I mean, I would assume so. Hold on. Oh, yeah. From like dash ES, as in S, as in like the German S. Es ist. Yeah, Wikipedia has so much here to go through, so I'll just use an easier example. Irish, like if you know where you can technically say "ich may," I eat, but what you would actually say is "ihem."
Yeah.
You slam an M onto the word "I" to eat. Sure, that M is just like the M from May.
Of course, yeah.
And it's way more transparent in Irish, and it's obviously more ubiquitous, etc. So yeah, that's generally how it works. You get that agreement just by smashing on pronouns onto the verb. Cool. Language be cool like that. And then, like I said, unlike English and most language we're familiar with here in Europe, you can smash multiple pronouns onto the verb, and then you have a really cool situation going on, which is nice. Okay. Right, that's all I have to say. Hopefully I'll have something more solid for y'all. Oh, FYI, just folks as well, the reference doc, it's a working document. Please don't expect greatness, okay? It's messy in parts, but here you go. The link to that will be in the show notes if you wish to see what we've done and read up on the language and tell me where I'm wrong, etc. Right, that is me. Next time, Halloween.
Excellent.
Okay.
Love that Halloween.
So thanks for listening, folks. Chat, thanks for being here for the premiere. Thanks for patronizing the show, watching the live streams, all that jazz. Thanks to you, Bill, for being here at this weird hour. Thank you for making it happen. Yeah. Until next time, Edgar out.